So China, ASEAN, and India are all growing powers. The supply chain in this region will dynamically change. So it is very important, crucial, to seize hold of opportunities created in this growing area. And if India takes part in the supply chain in Asia, it opens up a lot of possibilities to significantly expand production in this country. So I'll repeat, the regional economic integration participating in the supply chain network in Asia is very important and should be better utilized. Next slide, please. Today, I would like to talk about those issues briefly. One is manufacturing export, the Make in India. And next one is the regional economic integration. And third one is the dynamic change and price competitiveness. This is the room and export opportunities. And lastly, the manufacturing hub, RCEP and LookWest. And before going that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the potential of India as a hub for manufacturing. As almost everybody agreed, India has a great potential to be a manufacturing hub, or export hub, because there are a lot of supporting industries. Compared to Japanese companies in other ASEAN countries, the Japanese companies in India procure more and more from local companies, which shows the strong industry base in India. This is number one. And the number two is, of course, the abundant young workforce, talent. And number three, the India's strategic location. I mean, the India is very close to the Middle East and Africa, as well as East Asia. Regarding the Middle East and Africa, the Indian export, almost 30% of the Indian exports is toward to those regions. And regarding the East Asia, there are abundant of supply chain network. So India is in a position to better utilize those networks. And finally, of course, the potential of India is a rapid expansion of middle class, upper class, which has made the region more attractive as a consumer market. Next slide, please. So in order to materialize those potentials, of course, a lot of domestic reforms are vital and actually are going on. This is the Make in India policies under a Modi-led government. So ease of doing business comes first, because a lot of regulations are there, unfortunately, and regulation is so complex. So in Japanese companies, somebody said that before building a factory, we need building a kind of warehouse to store the documents which is necessary to the regulations. And of course, there are other measures like improving infrastructure, tax reform, including the introduction of GST, and the streamlining license kind of thing. So those measures in Make in India is a very impressive and broad and powerful. However, next slide, please. I'm sorry. This is the FDI data from China. So this shows the importance of FDI. Even in China, more than half, or almost half, of exports are relating to the foreign direct investment. So in order to strengthen the manufacturing, succeed in Make in India, FDI is a key point. And those reforms are very difficult, but government is very keen on tackling this. If those reforms are materialized, is it enough for India to be a low-cost manufacturing? Unfortunately, this is the era of mega competition, global competition, and mega FTAs. So this is not, unfortunately, enough. And what is needed is the regional economic integration. This is today's main topic. Could you go to the next slide? This is about the supply chain in East Asia. So in East Asia, supply chain networks for cross-border trading of parts and components, as well as raw materials, have been established based on regional economic integration. According to survey of some consulting companies, when you look at the container flows in Asia, 59 million TEU, while in Europe, 9 million TEU, and in Pacific Oceans, in both way, 27 million TEU, which shows in Asia, it's the center of the supply chain, cross-border trade of parts and components. Next page, please. But unfortunately, in the trade of intermediate goods, India's exposure so far is very small. This is ASEAN plus 6. The total of the intermediate goods is growing very quickly, and red is the Indian portion. So if India comes more and more in the supply chain network, there is a tremendous room and opportunities for all Indian market. Next slide, please. And of course, connectivity is important. As Honorable Ambassador Wadwa and Mr. Matsumoto mentioned, the connectivity is very important. And we have Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, Chennai-Bangalore Industrial Corridor, and Mekong India Economic Corridor. So if we can see those project materials, then the connectivity will be enhanced more and more, which is, of course, help India to become a low-cost manufacturing hub. Next slide, please. From now, after discussing the regional economic integration, I would like to focus on the opportunity or room for export. This is the data conducted by JETRO from the Japanese companies in Asia. And India is second left. And when you look at the red line from left to right, this indicates the ratio of exports from Japanese companies in each country. So India, 13.9%, second low, which means the Japanese companies in India selling their products and services domestically in Indian market, which means there are more and more room for increasing export. And actually, Japanese companies are already using India as an export base. For example, auto sectors, Maruti Suzuki, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, all of them are exporting from India to West and some parts to East. And given the India's competitive advantage, I am certain that the export by Japanese companies will be further bolstered in the futures. Next slide, please. And this is data and comment from Japanese companies. When you look at the middle, I compare the same car, different price in different region. So in India, for particular car, production between 8,000 to 13,000 US dollars. But when you look at the Thailand, this going up from 12,000 to 15,000 US dollars. And when you look at the voice of automotive companies in the right row, they said 30% price difference between ASEAN and India by the localization. So India has a very strong price competitiveness. And when you go the upper half, the supply chain is drastically changed. So now Thailand is a major automotive hub, and China is a major electronics production hub. But this will change in 5 to 10 years. For example, in auto, is expanding to Mekong countries regarding the auto parts, and electronic devices also expanding to Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, and so on. And in the future, maybe in Myanmar. So the important thing is, the supply chain is dynamic, not a statistic. This is the important point. Next slide, please. So to summarize, the domestic reform, together with the supply chain network and inviting FDI, then India will be more and more strong in terms of the manufacturing hub and the low-cost manufacturing hub. And from the company side also, the company is in a competition in building a global supply chain. So whether or not the company can build an effective global supply chain severely and importantly affect their competitiveness in global. So in this context, India has a very strong potential to contribute to the global companies also. Next slide, please. Finally, I would like to talk a little bit about the institution of the regional economic integration. Some of distinguished speakers mentioned already about RCEP. RCEP is the FTA and economic cooperation among 16 Asian countries, which is under negotiation, and the target date is the end of 2015. So we have 1 year left. I believe that the RCEP will benefit India also if properly frameworked and India can better utilize the RCEP. Firstly, the RCEP itself will accelerate the development of supply chains centering on East Asia through unified trade and investment rules. This is number one. And number two is the RCEP will enable India to optimally procure parts and components and increase opportunities for supplying raw materials, parts, and products. And so this further strengthens a hub for low-cost manufacturing. And thirdly, regarding the service, which is the most strongest part of India. So by getting concession from other Asian countries, India can expand their services market, including IT-related. And this is very important because the supply chains in manufacturing is already there in Asia, so there are a lot of needs for services. This is number 4. Now, of course, there are concerns about RCEP. A lot of products will be coming from overseas, East Asia. But in RCEP, there are many, not many, but some, but important remedies, such as safeguards and the anti-dumping. So if we can properly set up those mechanisms and use them, we can make a balance between the promotion of export and manufacturing hub, as well as the well-balanced, inclusive framework of international trade. And I want to draw attention the left below part, the electronic company's voice. They said to go through the process of import, local manufacturing, localization export, regional economic integration through FTA is vital, which means Indian market is very huge, but for the Japanese companies, sometimes the Indian market is not big enough because most of them are selling the high-end products, which is growing in India, but still small. And once those high-end market grows, many competitors comes in. So it's very hard, although the market is expanding, but very hard to get profit. So the strategy of Japanese companies is a step-by-step approach. Gradually, they are coming. They start first, set up a kind of agency, import the products from overseas to India, and then set up an assembly or local manufacturing, and then localize procure more and more parts domestically, and then finally export. In terms of this gradual approach, the regional integration through the FTA is, of course, important for the Japanese companies. So this is the overall story of my presentation. And I would like to conclude. As Honorable Ambassador Wadwa said, now the India and Japan relationship is very good. When Prime Minister Modi went to Japan on September, I went to Japan too, and JETRO organized an investment promotion seminar in Japan. And we have invited Prime Minister Modi to make a presentation about India. At that symposium, more than 3,000 or 4,000 people applied to attend the symposium. So the reaction are very positive, very enthusiastic. So what is important is to materialize on the ground this atmosphere. And JETRO would like to work hard to promote the partnership by trade and investment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abe. And now may I invite Ambassador Shah to sum up the whole thing and give us the benefit of his long experience in dealing with Japan. And a word about Japan-India in the East Asia context.
Good afternoon, colleagues from Symbiosis, Ministry of External Affairs, Japan, and friends. When Ambassador Wadwa gave you the details of what is the existing relationship between Japan and India, she mentioned, quite rightly, that our relations before 2000 were generally unremarkable. I was ambassador to Japan in the 90s, and it was hard work at that time to try and improve the Indo-Japanese relationship in a manner that we thought would have appeared to be the natural relationship between two important partners in Asia. Just to take one example, I don't think there was any visit of any prime minister during my stay between 92 and 95. And today, as Ambassador Wadwa mentioned, prime minister visits between Japan and India are annual, with one prime minister visiting the other alternately every 2 years in each other's country. And visits by the prime ministers are, of course, great occasions for everybody else to get together and provide the kind of groundwork and the progress on the ground for the two prime ministers and for the summits to be able to not only show success but also give directives for what the future holds. I would like to recall here, and that was purely in relation to a question that was raised this morning when you asked them about it, is that in actual practice or in actual reality, Prime Minister Nehru, right in the beginning of our independence, made it very clear that it is necessary for security and stability in Asia for us to give Japan a position of importance. This is, I'm talking way back to the beginning of our independence. In other words, when we decided not to join the agreements which the victors in the Second World War imposed on Japan, because we didn't think that that would be a nice thing to do to a country which may have lost the war, but still was considered by us to be one of the most important pillars in the Asian security setup. It was something that has been successively followed by all prime ministers and governments in terms of policy. But as the gentleman pointed out there, it took many, many years for us to realize that this potential in the relationship between India and Japan needs also to be progressed on the ground. And ironically enough, whatever was proposed by Prime Minister Nehru has really been taken forward in an extremely strong way by Prime Minister Modi, even though you might hear the difficulties or criticism from Nehruvian foreign policy from the present government. The difference that these two prime